We're going to jump right into some of these data questions. Tina, I want to start with you because I guess I want to set the stage for how data is foundation, how it serves as sort of the foundation of the effort. How much data, what kind of data, what quality, min, max, et cetera. And then we'll get into some of the specific questions that we're seeing coming across from the audience regarding data.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we think a lot in data layers, right? And once again, going back to the Google Map analogy, because it's so helpful. Google Maps is so great because it has multiple data layers. It has satellite data, and it has cars that drive around on the street and get your local data, and it ingests map data, geological survey data. And so by building all these layers and connecting them computationally, you get increasingly better and better ability to navigate the world, right? And so similar in biology, building more and more maps of biologically relevant context allows us to navigate human biology better and better. And I think, that kind of the best example, one thing that I learned coming here that's different than the way, I traditionally thought about how drug discovery was run is, kind of a traditional drug discovery approach would say, I'm working on this disease. I think this target is relevant in this disease. I'm going to design experiments to see if I can impact that target. We have a lot of scientists that actually come to Recursion and kind of bring that thinking with them. And we have to kind of retrain it to say, scientists don't design experiments here, or, computational scientists design experiments here. And so what we would say, if there's a certain cell context that's relevant to a disease, then what we'll do is let's run every experiment in that cellular context, right? Knock out every gene in the genome, and then build a large data set fit for machine learning, and then let the data navigate and guide us to where the opportunities are for the disease. And that's just a very different way to think about it. And it requires the ability to be able to, just the tools. Even when Recursion was founded, CRISPR technology was not mature enough to be able to knock out every gene in the genome with efficiency. We've run that experiment many times, here at Recursion in different contexts. And so thinking about how would you build up these data layers, whether it's a phenomic level data layer, whether it's a transcriptomic level data layer. We just did a great partnership with Tempus that allows us to ingest real world patient data in both sequencing and clinical outcome data, and continuing to build these data layers and then having the computational tools to navigate them. And the real goal here is for the data to autonomously navigate us to the drug, as opposed to us navigating ourselves, based on much more linear techniques to the drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew, I want to get your perspective on this, because you and I have had some. I had you on the Business Biotech podcast a while back, and we got into this data conversation, and I think I asked sort of the high level, sort of naive question, like, data is fundamental and necessary, and your best friend, and data can also be your worst enemy, right? Like, and there's a question I want to dovetail this in with a question that just came across from the audience. Would you recommend using small, high quality data sets, 100 mAb variant sequences, or large noisy data sets, 100,000 sequences to build and validate ML models? So that's like a specific example. But when we talk about like a biotech company that's interested in getting started in this, and they think that they've got some data that they can query that might serve the purpose, what are we looking for? Like, how do I know I got what I need to start, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, there are, in essence, 4 ways you can sort of implement computation, right? You can build new models, you can take existing models, make better versions of it, you can generate data, or you can find new ways to sort of use the data that you have. And so I hate giving the sort of the lawyerly answer of that it depends in this particular question. But, what's the scientific question that's being asked, right? Just saying, hey, I have this data, is it useful? If you have 100 map variants that, you did an alanine scan across and you bounded the same target, that's actually very informative if that's your target of interest, assuming that there's no conflicting targets, right? There's no off-target effects. And then when you're looking at, for example, like large noisy data, 100,000 sequences, what does that mean, right? Where's that data being attuned to? Is it, just randomly generated 100,000 100,000 antibodies. I mean, you can use that data to train a model to generate versions of, generate data, right? I'll give you an example of what I mean. At Evolve, one of the things that we do is sort of, instead of using animals or immune systems in a vial, we copy how your immune system forms antibodies, and that becomes our basis for generating antibody sequences. So that's how we get fully human antibody sequences. So 100,000 sequences, I mean, it's not very large, right? Like, we're using much larger data sets to generate those sequences. But I think there's a really interesting argument to be made that there is significant value in having very large data sets, but it doesn't mean that at the non-utility of small data sets. And really, it goes back, what is the scientific question or outcome you're trying to do? How well can you engineer that data? Right now, a lot of these algorithms are allowing us to represent data in new forms, right? These embedding spaces. This is what these language models are often very good at. You have an embedding, a representation. What that means is, like, for example, the word cat has a significant embedding space because of all the times it's existed in literature. So now there's an embedding that represents the word cat. Well, if you can represent an amino acid sequence, or you can represent an amino acid itself via an embedding model, now you're representing data in new forms, and you can use it in new ways. And it captures a lot of information that wouldn't otherwise be able to be captured by just looking at a linear sequence. Things like structural information, conformational information, and other things that may be more engineering focused and less science focused, right? Capturing lots of information as opposed to a specific data point. And so I think that there's a lot to be said about large data sets and small data sets. I think, that if you're trying to decode biology, which is what Recursion is trying to do, having large data sets allows you to do that. If you're trying to build a map of the world, Google map of the world, that's really important. If you're trying to build a map of your house or a map of your door, right, it's a different set of problems, and it's just the question that you're trying to ask.
Yeah. Tina, anything to add there?
Yeah, I just couldn't agree more. I think the real question is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What data do you have? And then what computational tools do you need in order to answer that question or navigate the data? I think this is the kind of place where I think we sometimes get into AI feeling like hype, because we focus on the AI itself or the computational techniques themselves. Really, all AI is, it's a tool to be able to navigate and learn from really large data sets. And if you have a really large data set that you need to answer your question, you can't navigate that without machine learning or some other tools. So I think it's almost like, I always like to start with the data set. There are we did a lot of amazing things in this world with relatively small data sets, right? And those data sets are still relevant. To Andrew's point, like something, if we want to decode all of human biology, we're going to want to take advantage of the fact that we can today now create very large data sets. And when you create very large data sets, you have to have new computational techniques to navigate them.